Begin today the Gemara towards the bottom of Beis and with Beis at the Gemara, right after the Mishnah. So this is the first Mishnah of the Masechta. So the Gemara is going to discuss why are we learning now Masechta Shevuos after Makkos. So the Gemara Mechti, let's see Tana mi Makkos Alik. The Tana is coming from Masechta Makkos. Ma'ishna the Tani Shevuos. What is it that's distinct about Shevuos that it should come after Makkos? And says the Gemara, Mishum de Tani, because in one of the last missions of Makkos, it said regarding the mitzvah or the lav of not cutting off the payas, that achayev ala roish shtayim, that even though it's one lav, but there are the two sides where one would be chayev twice, which is achas mikan, on both sides where the jaws meet the skull and the sides by the ear, which is the mitzvah to leave payas. So it's really one lav, but you chayev twice. And similar, it says, regarding the Isser to cut off the beard, the Valazokin, that the Shtayim Mikan and Shtayim Mikan, V'achas Malmata, that there are the different points in the beard. And Rashi's description for this is, there's a few opinions in Rishonim. We saw before in Masechta Makkos what the Rivan says. But here, Rashi says, if I understand correctly, that the Shtayim Mikan is, there is one sort of below the ear, where the cheekbone, there's a point of the cheekbone below the ear. Then there's another point of the cheekbone that's sort of below the eye, a little bit further out. Right, so those 2 points. And then, same on the other side. And then the center of the chin, where both parts of the cheekbone come together, there's a point there. That's the 5th place. So this is both cases where there's one lav, but you chayiv twice. Or one lav and you chayiv 5. So therefore, so the Gemara says, Chode de mechayiv latarti. It's a case where it's one lav and you mechayiv twice by the payas, or even more regarding the beard. So therefore, Tana, and continuation to this, it begins with Shevuos, which is also Shtayim Shein Arba. The case of Shevuos, there are 2 that are clear in the Torah, and then there's another 4 that we darshan, so it's 2 that ends up being 4, so it's a similar thing. So according to the Gemara's answer, in the content, there has no connection. But there's a connection just in the numbers of 1 being 2 or 2 being 4. Another question the Gemara asks, Ma'ishna hacha. What's the difference that here, in the beginning of this Masechta, the Tani luhu l'kulum, that it mentions not only the Shevuos of the Rashtaim Shenarba, but then it says also regarding the Satoma that Rashtaim Shenarba, and then Shabbos it's Rashtaim Shenarba, and Negoyim as well. Ma'ishna gabi Yitzi is Shabbos, but in the Mishnah, beginning of Masechta Shabbos, where it mentions also Rashtaim Shenarba regarding Shabbos, and Umaris Negayim, and then in the Mishnah in Masechta Negayim, where it mentions the colors of the Negayim that they're Shtaim Shenar, but the Lekatan Lulakulam doesn't go on to give the whole list like here. And says the Gemara Amri, so they said Shevuos v'Yidiyas Atuma. The reason why the Tana goes on to say one more besides Shevuos, and it mentions also Yidiyas Atuma, the reason is 2 reasons. Number 1, the Gabi Adodik Sivan. In the Torah, in the end of Parshas Vayikra, it says this of Shevuos. And then it says, and then you bring a carbon for it, and also the Yidiyas Satuma, when one had a helim and he went into the base of Mikdash Tameh, so the psukim, it's one right near the other. And also, V'damyana Dadi B'Karbon Oil V'Yored. There's a similarity in the carbon that they both have a unique carbon, which is called the Karbon Oil V'Yored. It goes up and down, depending on if the person is rich and he could afford, he brings a more expensive carbon, and if he's poor, he brings a cheaper carbon. So, Tanilu, Gabi Hadadi. So it says these 2 together. Then, the Tani Tarti, once the Mishnah already went off from the subject and it mentioned another one, so it says 2 Tani Kulu. So it mentions already the additional ones, Shabbos and Negayim, where there's also Shtayim Shein Arba. Another point the Gemara asks in the Mishnah, Pasach B'Shvuos. The Tana starts with the halacha of Shevuos that are Shtayim Shein Arba, but then, Umefarish Yidiyas Atuma. What are the details that the Tana focuses on explaining? The second one that it brings, all the halachas about the carbon for the Yidiyas Atuma. And says the Gemara, I did the Zutra Milayo, since regarding Yidiyas Atuma, there are less details than there is for Shevuos, which is really the main subject of this Masechta. So, Pasik, Shari, Lahu, so the Tana wants to discuss this and sort of discuss this sufficiently and move on. And then Vahadar, Tani Shevuos, the Nefishim Milayo. And then, coming to the 3rd Pedic, and the remainder of the Masechta, the Tana is going to discuss all the details relating to Shevuos that are more. That is a bit longer discussion. Okay, now the Gemara explains what's the taich, what's the meaning of the Mishnah when it says Shtayim Shehin Arba regarding all these cases. So it says Shevuos Shtayim Shein Arba. What is the Shtayim Shein Arba regarding Shevuos? Shtayim is Sho'echol v'Shelo Yochol. When a person makes a Shevuah, all for the future, either for the future that I will eat, or he makes a Shevuah for the future that he will fast, he will not eat. And he doesn't fulfill that Shevuah, so then he has to bring a carbon. Now what's Shehein Arba, that are then four? Achalti v'Shelo Achalti. It doesn't say it explicitly in the pasuk. In the pasuk it uses the future term of lahara and lahetiv, but there's also psukim that we learn out from it that even if he said about the past that I ate, or about the past that I did not eat, and if he did not swear the truth, then he's going to be chayav a carbon for that as well. That's Shevuos Shtayim Shein Arba. Yidiyas Atom Shtayim Shein Arba. What is this referring to? Two. That's then four. Shtayim. So the two that are explicit in the pasuk is Yidiyas Tumas Kaidesh, Yidiyas Tumas Mikdash. In the case where a person had the awareness that he was tamei and he's eating kachim, or he had the awareness that he's tamei and he's walking into the Beis HaMikdash, but then when he actually ate the kachim, or when he walked into the Beis HaMikdash, he forgot. He forgot about the tumah. That's the case. The pasuk speaks about a case where the person forgot that he's tamei. Rashi brought the pasuk v'nelam mimenu v'hu tamei. Forgot he's tamei. Shehein Arba, and then there's another two because it's kaidesh or mikdash. If the person knew he's tamei but he didn't realize he's eating kachim, or he didn't realize that he's walking into the Beis HaMikdash, so there the helim is something else. It's not clear in the pasuk, and in such a case he'll also be chayav a carbon. The next case that said in the Mishnah, Yitzi is Shabbos Shtayim Shein Arba, carrying out on Shabbos is two, that's then four. Shtayim is Yitzod Oni, Yitzod the Balabais. The two is what's explicit in the Pasuk, Al Yetzi Ishmim Kaimei, that no one should carry out. It's whether it's the Oni, the poor individual that's standing outside and sticks his hand in and brings the object out, or it's the Balabais, which is inside, and he lifts up something and hands it out to the poor person outside. And then Shehein Arba, there's another four, or there's another two, which is then four, Hachnasa the Ani, Vachnasa the Balabais, going in, bringing it in. Whether it's the Ani outside bringing in, or the Balabais sticking out his hand and bringing something in. That's not explicit in the pasuk, so therefore it's another two. Now, Maris Negayim, the colors of the Negayim Shnayim. There are two that the Torah clearly says, Shehein Arba, but then there's another two. So the Shnayim are Se'es u'Beheres. In the pasuk, this week's parsha, it says the term of Se'es and Beheres. Those are two very bright shades of white, like snow or like wool. And then Shehein Arba, there's another two that are considered to be Toildas, offsprings of these. So there's Se'es v'Toldasa, the Se'es, and then the Toilda of it, which is not as white, and Beheres v'Toldasa, and then the one that's similar to the Beheres but not as white. And that's as Rashi says when the pasuk says Sapachas. Sapachas is not a name of a nega. Sapachas means a toilda, one that's similar to the se'es and the beheres. So that's four. Okay, now the Gemara is going to focus on the two things that said Shevuos Shtayim Shein Arba and Yidiyas Atom Shtayim Shein Arba. The way the Gemara described before what this is referring to in the Mishnayos later in the Masechta, there's actually machlokes about this, and therefore there's going to be a problem with our Mishnah. According to which opinion is our Mishnah stating this? Fragt the Gemara, Mani Masnissen. Who is the Tana of our Mishnah? It seems that Lo Rabbi Shmuel v'Lo Rabbi Akiva. It doesn't fit with Rabbi Shmuel's opinion and not with Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Why? Because Rabbi Shmuel, if it's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, Ha'amar Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Shmuel, that it says later in the Masechta and the Mishnah, Eina Chayev Ela Ala Asad Lavei, that you only have to bring the carbon oil of v'yored if one makes a shvuah for the future and doesn't keep it. But if you made a shvuah for the past and it wasn't true, it's asur, but there's no carbon for that. In other words, the pasuk says future, so that's the carbon. He doesn't hold of the drasha that for the past you also have a carbon. So if so, when it says in the Mishnah Shevuos Shtayim Shein Arba, it can't fit with Rabbi Shmuel. On the other hand, Rabbi Akiva, if we would say that it's Rabbi Akiva that argues with Rabbi Shmuel regarding the Shevuos and says that even for the past you have a carbon, but Ha'amar, Rabbi Akiva says regarding the din of Tumah, that Al Helim Tumah Hu Chayev, if what the person forgot was the fact that he's Tamei, then he's Chayev to bring a carbon, but Ve'ena Chayev Al Helim Mikdash. But if what he forgot didn't realize that he's walking in the Beis HaMikdash or that he's eating kachim, that Helim you're not Chayev for. So if so, when it says in the Mishnah Shtayim Shein Arba regarding Yediyas Atumah, that it explained that the Shehein Arba means that he forgot about the Beis HaMikdash or about what he's eating, according to Rabbi Akiva, you're not Chayev for that. So how could you say Shein Arba? It says the Gemara, Iba Yisayim Rabbi Shmuel, Iba Yisayim Rabbi Akiva. The Mishnah could be either Rabbi Shmuel or Rabbi Akiva. Iba Yisayim Rabbi Shmuel, either our Mishnah could be Rabbi Shmuel, Mehen L'chiyov or Mehen L'ptor. The Mishnah here is not saying all 4 by Shevuah that you chayiv a carbon on them. It's saying 2 that are explicit in the Torah, lahara, lahetiv, that you chayiv a carbon, and then another 2 which are also aser. Rabbi Shmuel agrees it's aser, but it's going to be potter, no carbon. That's the Shehein Arba. Or if you buy Seimer Rabbi Kiva, or the Mishnah Kibir Rabbi Kiva, and you could say by Yediyah Satumah. Also, Mehen L'chiyuv, there are those, the 2 that you chayiv if the person forgot about his tumah, or Mehen L'ptur, and then the other 2, Shehein Arba, when the person didn't realize he's walking in the Beis HaMikdash or eating the kachim, there will be potter. The Gemara asks on this pshat, how could you say this? L'ptur, the Mishnah here, when it counts Shehein Arba, is including cases that you potter. But Hadumye, the Maras Negoyim Katani, it's listing these similar to the Shtaim Shehein Arba that it says by the colors of the Negoyim. Ma'asam, just like by the Negoyim, Kulu L'chiyuve, all of the colors of the Negoyim, you're all chayiv in it. It's all Negoyim that a person becomes Tameh, and then afterwards, when the Nega goes away and he's Tahir, he has to bring a carbon for all of them. So they're all the same chiyuv of a carbon that will apply. So, same Avhacha over here, when it says Shvuah Shtaim Shein Arba or Yediyah Satum Shtaim Shein Arba, Nami Kulu L'chiyuve. It seems to also be talking about, in all 4 cases, that they're chayiv. How could it be? Not according to Rabbi Shmuel and not according to Rabbi Kiva. Could you say Shtaim Shein Arba regarding Shevuos and regarding Yediyah Satumah? So the Gemara says a different shot. We're not talking about a carbon here. La'olam Rabbi Shmuel. Regarding Shevuah, I can tell you that it's Rabbi Shmuel when the Mishnah says Shtaim Shein Arba and Yechayev for all 4 cases, including in a case where a person makes a Shevuah about the past. Now, this that we quoted in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel later says that regarding a shvuah that's made for the past, you're not chayiv to bring a carbon. If that wasn't true, that's a carbon. Aval malchus chiyuv mechayiv. But for malchus, one would be chayiv for a shvuah that he made about the past and it wasn't true. And what's the source for this? It doesn't even say in the Torah, seemingly. It says lahara le'etiv. Where do you see that he's chayiv malchus for the past? Okay, this is learned out from what Rava said. Rava says, Befeirish, Ripsa, Teira, Shevuos, Sheker. The Teira clearly says that one will get Malchus for Shevuos, Sheker. Shevuos, Sheker means, he said, a Shevuah, which is a lie. So we're talking about the person that is speaking about the past. How do we know? Dumye, the Shevuos Shav. Similar to a Shevuos Shav. Now, what's a Shevuos Shav? Shevuos Shav is a case. It's 2 examples for Shevuos Shav. Shevuos Shav is either a case where a person makes a Shevuah about something that is obvious that it's not true. He says on a piece of metal that it's a piece of wood, or on a ish that she's a isha, things that are obviously a lie. That's a Shevuah like for nothing. Or another case where a person says, I make a Shevuah on this piece of stone, that it's a stone. It's a Shevuah for nothing. That's where a person's chayiv malchus for. Now, the fact that you chayiv malchus for Shevuas Shav is not so simple, because this is a lav she'im by ma'isa. The person did no action to be chayiv malchus. However, there's a clear pasuk, as Rashi here brings, the Gemara learns out later, that regarding this kind of a shvuah, even though there is no ma'isa, one will be chayiv malchus, because it says in the pasuk regarding a shvuah shav that if one makes a shvuah shav, lo yinoke, that Hashem will not purify him. And the Gemara says it means that Hashem in Bezdin Shel Maila he can't get purified for this. But in the Bezdin Shel Mata, he could, because he gets Malchus. So over there it says, and it says actually again at the end of the pasuk a second time, Lashav, 2 times. So now Rava learns out, because it says twice in the pasuk Lashav, why does it have to say the expression of Lashav twice? The second time is extra, therefore the second time is not talking about the Shevuah Shav, it's talking about a Shevuah Sheker, where a person made a Shevuah and the Shevuah is a lie. Okay, so what's the case though of the Shevuah Sheker? So the Gemara says, Rava says, the Shevuah Sheker that you learn out from Shevuah Shav, that Yechayev Malchus, even though there's no Maisa, what kind of a Shevuah Sheker is it? There's 2 kinds of Shevuah Sheker, as we're learning here. One Shevuah Sheker is for the future. Another Shevuah Sheker is for the past. What's the difference? A Shevuah Sheker that's for the future, if a person makes this Shevuah, he's not Chayev Malchus immediately, or there's no Issa that he's doing right away. If he doesn't keep the Shevuah, he swears he's going to eat, and he doesn't eat, so then he did an Isser. By Shevuah Sheker for the past, as soon as he makes the Shevuah, that I ate in the past, I ate today, and he did not eat yet, so he's Chayiv Shevuah right away. So when we compare Shevuah Sheker to Shevuah Shav to learn out that you Chayiv Malchus, you compare it in a similar kind of a case to a Shevuah Shav where you would be Chayiv Malchus right away for making this Shevuah for nothing. So to the Shevuah, which is a lie, is referring to the past where he's going to be chayiv malchus right away. That's how Rava compares it. That's what you learn it out from. So again, mash Shevuos shav l'sha'avar. By Shevuos shav, it's speaking about the past, about something that he's chayiv malchus right away. Av sheker nami l'sha'avar. When he's making a shvuah that's a lie, it's talking about the past. And therefore, in our Mishnah, when it says shtayim shein arba, it's referring to being chayiv malchus, not the korban chatos. You talk about chayiv korban chatos when it's in the past, but the malchus you learn out from this pasuk, which would be even on the past. Okay, but the Gemara still says you're not going to be chayiv malchus in all four cases, right? It's a shtayim shein arba, but it's not going to be all four cases. Why not? So when a person makes a Shevuos sheka about the past, saying that I ate or I didn't eat and it's a lie, so yeah, for that there's malchus, as we just said, kid Rava, like Rava learns out from a Shevuos shav. In a case where a person makes a Shevuah for the future that he will eat, or rather that he will not eat, that is. He makes a Shevuah that he will not eat, and he went and ate. So Nami, we understand why it's chayiv malchus for this, because it's a lav sheyesh b'maisa. This is a lav where he's doing an action to not fulfill his shvuah. But elo, oichel v'lo yachal, if the person's shvuah is for the future, and he makes a shvuah that he's going to eat, and he doesn't eat, so then amai, why in this case would he be chayiv? Lav she'em by maisuhu. This is a lav where there's no action, and this is not included in the limud of Rava. Rava learned out from a shvuas shav in a case where you're over the issa right away. But here it's a shvuah that he made for the future, which is not something that's right away. You have to wait to see if the person will not eat. So this is a lav that there's no maisa. So why should he be chayiv malchus for this?
That's included.
Huh? Because this is one of the cases of the shtayim shein arba. The shtayim is going on the future, where whether he made a shvuah of oichel for the future or a shvuah shelo oichel, in the case where the person makes a shvuah that he's going to eat in the future and he doesn't eat, he's being over on a shvuah, but it's aim by maisa. So the rule of lav she'aim by maisa, that you don't get malchus, should apply here. So how could the Mishnah say that there are four cases that you chayiv malchus? And since the Gemara Kesava Rabbi Shmuel holds lav she'aim by maisa loiken olav. You don't need the whole thing it said before, but the point is Rabbi Shmuel holds that even a lav where there's no maisa, there is malchus. As we learned in Masechta Makis, there is such an opinion. I think it was Rabbi Yehuda, that you are chayiv malchus. Okay, but the Gemara asks now, if that's the case, what does it mean? That we're saying that this Mishnah here is Rabbi Shmuel, and his opinion is that for a lav she'ein by maisa, you get malchus, and therefore you have four cases where there'll be malchus. But now our Mishnah, though, is a stam Mishnah. There's no name. It's a stam Mishnah saying a halacha, which could only make sense if it's saying that you chayiv malchus. But now, if so, Yachi Kashi Rabbi Yochanan, we will have a contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Why? Because Rabbi Yochanan said the rule halacha is stam Mishnah. We always pashkin like a stam Mishnah. So in our case, we have a stam Mishnah saying that lav shem ben maisa is malchus. But then on the other hand, we see that Rabbi Yochanan is the one that holds that for a lav shem by maisa there's no malchus. In the following case, a person makes a shvuah that I'm going to eat this loaf of bread today, and the day passes and he didn't eat it, so there's no malchus. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both agree that there's no malchus. Now the question is though why? Rabbi Yochanan, the reason there's no malchus is because this is a lav where there's no action. The day passed, he didn't eat it, there's no action, and therefore there's no malchus. Reish Lakish says there is no malchus for a different reason, because asra safeki. Here the warning for this aveda that you would get malchus then is asra, that's a doubtful asra. Why is it a doubtful asra? Because even though there's one action, or one not action rather, not to eat, which is the aveda. So what's the doubt over here? Because when he gets the asra, it's still the middle of the day. So he still has time to eat. So you don't know if he's actually being over this Isra or not when you're giving him the Asra. And then later on in the day, the Asra is not Toich K'dei Dibur anymore. The Asra has to be when the person does the Aveda. So B'Shas Maisi gets the Asra. He doesn't take it seriously because there's more time in the day. So this is Asra Safik. According to Reish Lakish, this kind of Asra, doubtful Asra, is not a good warning. So there's no malchus. So we clearly see here that Rabbi Yochanan holds that when you have when you have a lav shem b'maisa, that there's no malchus. So how could we say that we have here a stam mishnah for a lav she'em b'maisa that there is malchus, and Rabbi Yochanan says that we always paskin like a stam mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, Stame Achrine Ashkach. Rabbi Yochanan found a different Stam Mishnah where it says that you do get Malchus, or that you don't get Malchus for Alav Shem B'Maisa. So Rabbi Yochanan sticks to his rule that you go by Stam Mishnah, but he found another Stam Mishnah. Where's the other Stam Mishnah? Hi Stam. Which Stam Mishnah are you referring to? Ilema Stam. Do you think that it's this Stam Mishnah that Tanan the Mishnah says regarding the Korban Pesach? Avala Moise B'Toir, someone that leaves over from the Korban Pesach, and even if it's a Korban Pesach that's tar that you could eat from, or Vashever B'Tamei, one breaks one of the bones of the Korban Pesach, which is Tamei, Ein Aloike, as Harbaim, there's no Malchus. So what's the reason for these two halachas? The fact that if someone breaks a bone from the Korban Pesach when it's tamei, there's no malchus t'chsiv. When the pasuk says the lav that you may not break any of the bones of Korban Pesach, it says ve'etzem lo'isishberu boy, do not break a bone in it, and it says boy. What does boy mean? B'kosher. If it's a Korban Pesach that's fit for eating, v'loy b'pasel, not a Korban Pesach that's tamei. There the lav does not apply. But this, that if a person leaves over from the Korban Pesach after the time in the morning, and it's Korban Pesach that's even tired, my time, what's the reason there's no Malchus? So lav, don't you think the reason is, it's a lav with no action, he's just leaving it, and therefore there's no Malchus with no action. So here's the Stam Mishnah, that for lav she'en b'maisa, there's no Malchus. That was the Stam Mishnah that Rabbi Yochanan relied on. But the Gemara asks him this, how do you know that's the reason why by Noisar there's no Malchus? Umimai, how do you know that Rabbi Yaakov, that this Mishnah regarding the Noisar, the reason there's no Malchus follows Rabbi Yaakov's opinion? The Omar and Rabbi Yaakov said in a different place, as the Gemara is going to quote, that Lav Shem by my saying like an Olav, that the reason why over there's no Malchus is because there's no action involved. Domer Rabbi Yehudi. Maybe that Mishnah that says that for Neisar by the Korban Pesach there's no Malchus, the reason is a different reason, like Rabbi Yehuda said. And what is the reason? The Mishom, the Ba Akas of Litan Esa, Achalois Esa, because it's called a Lav Hanitik Lasei. The Lav, the Torah gives a Esa how to correct it, that if you leave it over, then you have to burn it. So it has nothing to do with a Lav Shem by Maisa. But Halav Hachi, if not for the fact that it's a Lav Hanitik Lasei, that there's an Asay to correct it, lucky. Maybe that Mishnah holds that you would get Malchus, even if it's a Lav Shem by Maisa. Now, where is the source of this machlekes of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov? The Tanya, as we learned in Abraisa, when it says in the pasuk, "Leisisirim imenu ad boiker," don't leave over from the Korban Pesach to the morning. Ve'anoisam imenu ad boiker. If you leave over beish t'shroif, you have to burn it. Ba akosav litin esa achaleis esa. So the Torah is giving you a mitzvah after the lav loymar she'en loikanolo to tell you how you correct it, and you correct it, and there's no malchus. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So not because lav shem b'mas, because it's a lav and it's a klasei. Rabbi Yaakov says, "Loymar Hashem uzeh." No, that's not the reason. The essay here is not to correct the lav to pater you from the malchus. Elo mishum davar lav she'em by ma'aseh, v'lav she'em by ma'aseh like an olav. Since there's no action, there's no malchus. But the point remains that the Stam Mishnah, the Gemara quoted to prove that according to Rabbi Yochanan, there's another Stam Mishnah that says lav she'em by ma'aseh, that there's no malchus. It's not true. That Stam Mishnah is talking about a Korban Pesach, and maybe there the reason is different because it's a lav hanitik laseh. So we're still left with our question: why would Rabbi Yochanan not paskin like the Stam Mishnah here, which the Gemara proved that the only way to explain Shevuos Shtaim Shehein Arba is to say that it's speaking about Malchus, and that you chayiv Malchus even for a lav shein by Maisa. Says the Gemara, Elo halahai stam hashkach. Here's the Stam Mishnah that he found, and it's actually further here in the Masechta. The Mishnah says Shevuos shelo yechol kikazu. A person makes one Shevuos that he's not going to eat this bread, and then he makes another Shevuos. Shevuos shelo yechleno. Again, Ashua, I will not eat it. V'achlo. And he went and did eat it. He's only chayiv one malchus. What's the reason for this? Because when he made the first shvuah, it became aser. He has to fulfill that shvuah. It's a mitzvah to fulfill that shvuah. And a person that makes another shvuah to fulfill a mitzvah that he has, you're not chayiv for that. A shvuah, you're only chayiv for not fulfilling a shvuah regarding something that's voluntary. But if it's already a mitzvah after he made the first shvuah, so the second shvuah does not take effect to be mechayiv and makarbon. So and then the Mishnah there says, Zu hi shvuas bitoy. This is the shvuah that a person utters with his mouth, shechayavin al zedayna makis al shegigasa carbon. That he would be chayiv if it's b'mezid, he would be chayiv malkis, and if it's b'shegig, he would be chayiv a carbon. That's carbon, that is. This carbon that goes up and down for the rich and poor individual. Now, when the Mishnah, let's finish the Inyan over here. When the Mishnah adds over there this expression, Zu hi shu, this is the shvuas bitoy. Why is that Mishnah say this? So it's saying, Zui the chayavin al zadayna makis. This case, you'll be chayiv malchus if it was done b'mezid. Aval, oichel, v'lo yachal. But in a case where a person made a shvuah that he will eat, and he did not eat, so there's no action involved. In this case, loy loki, he will not get malchus, right? So the Mishnah Dafka chose the example when the person made a shvuah that I will not eat, and then he went and eat, so he did a maisa. Only then is there malchus. But in the case where it's the opposite, so there's no maisa, so there's no malchus. So here's the Stam Mishnah, where it says that alav she'ein by maisa, there's no malchus. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan paskins like this Stam Mishnah. So the Gemara clarifies, Mechdi, let's see. High stama, v'high stama. We have two Stam Mishnahs. The Stam Mishnah here in the beginning of the Masechta, where it says, Alav Shem B'maisa, you get Malchus. And here this Mishnah, later in the Masechta, Alav Shem B'maisa, that there's no Malchus. My Chazid David Kehai, why is he doing like the Stam Mishnah that's later? Again, my Chazid David ki high stama. Why is he following the Stam Mishnah later? Le'evid ki high stama. Let him follow the first Stam Mishnah of the Masechta. Okay, so the Gemara explains, according to your reasoning, Rebbe Gufei, Rebbe himself that was Masad the Mishnah is Hechi Sasalon Hocha Hochi Lahocha Hochi. How does Rebbe make one Stam Mishnah this way here in the beginning of the Masechta that there is Malchus, and then later on different that there's no Malchus? So the Gemara explains, Elo, what happened was, Meikar Sovar, in the beginning Rebbe held that Lav Shem Be Maisa like an Olav, that even though there's no Maisa, there is Malchus V'sasma. And therefore the Mishnah at the beginning of the Peirik, or in the beginning of the Masechta, he writes a Stam Mishnah that there would be Malchus. But then, V'hoda Sovar, then Rebbe retracted, and now his opinion was that ain't like an Olav, that there's no Malchus, and therefore V'sasma. So later in the Masechta, he writes a Stam Mishnah that there's no Malchus. But so since that's the later Mishnah, that's the one that we follow. Mishnah, the first Mishnah that he wrote, which was not his conclusion, that Mishnah remains in its place. But since the Mishnah later, the second Mishnah, that's where Rebbe retracted, therefore we follow that Mishnah, that Lav She'ein by Maisa, Ein Loik and all of that's why Rabbi Yochanan said that.